contrary to whatever has been said or could be said, the fact that an independent Scotland will become a member of the EU, if it wants to, you can refuse, like Switzerland or Norway, but if you want to, there's no doubt they will become a member state of EU. First, there would be geostrategic consideration. Let's imagine that UK, Spain, because they're afraid of Catalonia, Basque, and so on, say, no way, Scotland never comes in. Then Mr. Putin flies in and say, well, maybe we can have some sort of an agreement for, I know you have a submarine base here that you don't know what to do with, and but maybe Mr. Putin will be interested to have Russian submarines based here, or whatever. So basically, this idea of veto, sure, it's legally possible, but at some point, politically, it cannot be used. And also, if we take seriously, it's an open question because a lot of things happened since. The Laeken Declaration, which was proclaimed by the European Council in 2001 in Brussels. Actually, Laeken is just a nearby neighborhood of Brussels, where there's a nice royal property, by the way. And they say the only border for Europe is democracy. So basically, if you're a democratic state, you can become European. It's not that easy. We've seen with Ukraine and other countries, it may be difficult. But anyway, that's the position of the EU. And also, if you look at what happened, EU has this logic of enlarging. And it will not change, especially for territories such as Scotland, who are part of the core territory of EU. Naturally, enlarging to the east, enlarging to the south are open questions. To the south, it's not even open so far. But completing the map is no problem. It's why the Balkans country will be in sooner or later and so on. So basically, Scotland will join sooner or later the EU. Also, my last preliminary remark, the consequence, the immediate consequence of a vote as regard EU membership, citizens' rights as regard EU law will not be as dramatic as people pretend. We have some precedent. In Greenland, they held a referendum in 1982 because they didn't want EC law to apply anymore to Greenland. They could not do it before. When Denmark came in, they had no home rule, as they call it, so kind of devolution. They had that in 79, and then they decided, mostly because of their fishery policy, to get out of EC treaty. They voted in 82, but it took until 85 to negotiate their way out. And they're not really out, actually. If you look at Article 204 of the implementation treaty, how do you call it in English? No, Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, it says that they are an associate territory now. More interesting even, the Algeria case. Algeria, before having a good team in the World Cup, Soccer World Cup, no, you say football here, sorry. Football World Cup. No, you talk too much about America and so on. They were part of France. In 1962, they proclaimed independence. And clearly, if you look at Article 198 and following, which is associate territory, basically it is for states whose external representation are ensured by a member state of the EU. And I can tell you, even though I was not born in 1962, but I'm absolutely sure that independent Algeria did not consider that France was representing it in the global world. It was, I mean, they had a war of independence, a bloody war, and so on. So basically, Algeria was really an enemy state for France at that time. And still, from 1962 to 1968, there was a long transition period in which EC rules, they were much less elaborate than now. It's true, but still, it did apply until 1968 in Algeria territory. So basically, there is no one day in, one day off. It doesn't work like that. We also have a very interesting case from the European Court of Justice, the Rothman case. I won't go into detail, but basically it was a guy, Austrian guy, who acquired German nationality fraudulently, actually. He didn't tell them that he had a lot of trouble with justice in Austria, and the Germans gave him the nationality, German nationality. According to Austrian law, he lost his Austrian nationality. Then the Germans, actually the authority of Bavaria, the Freistaat Bavaria, discovered that he had lied to acquire the German nationality, citizenship. So they said, well, it's in our law, you cannot keep it. So they kick him out. and, well, he had no more European citizenship. So he went to the local court and had it asking a question, preliminary ruling, to the European Court of Justice. And the European Court of Justice basically said that, yes, states should abstain of depriving citizens, EU citizens, from their EU citizenship. But in that case, Mr. Rothman, because he had personally committed offenses, could be deprived of EU citizenship because it was his own personal fault. But it would certainly not be the personal fault of every Scots citizen that Scotland votes to leave the UK and so that they are deprived of their EU citizenship. So basically, here's a room for maneuver. And I think the best argument comes from Switzerland. We have bilateral agreements, a lot of them, about 120 of them, with the EU, or EC, or EC plus member state. I don't go into detail. And we have one on the free movement of person. We also have Schengen and so on. I mean, so to a large extent, even though most people don't realize, Switzerland is more integrated within the EU policies than the UK. But anyway. But in this agreement, it's a bilateral agreement, and it can be terminated, repealed. And then Article 23, I've put it there, I hope it's big enough, says that in the event of termination of this treaty, all the acquired rights will be preserved. So even with a non-member state only linked by a treaty with the EU, the right acquired by the individual beings should be preserved even if the treaty comes to an end. So very clearly, for a territory which was part of a member state and becomes a new state, there is no way the EU will try to just say, oh, sorry, you're out, you have no more rights. Which leads to a complex question. And actually, this is what I would like to work on. And by the way, this principle that there is no immediate way out is now embedded in the treaty. If you look at Article 50, which allows a state to leave according to its own choice, the EU, it cannot do it unilaterally. Even if a state wants to leave, then it says in Article 50, there is a maximum 2-year period to negotiate the condition for the state leaving the EU.